Welcome to Third to First Youth Baseball Show. We're Tim and Eric, bringing you our perspective, being as we are both coaches and parents. We take a look at and discuss youth baseball from many angles and perspectives. Be sure to find us online at thirdtofirst.com and on Instagram at thirdtofirst_podcast. Make sure to subscribe. What's going on, Tim?
Not much, Eric. Good to see you.
Our guest today is Greg Acheatel. Welcome, Greg.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Greg grew up in West Hills, a little area in the San Fernando Valley, part of Los Angeles, where he played baseball at West Hills Baseball, the Pony League, and was a four-year starter at El Camino High School. He was fortunate enough to go to Dodger Stadium, where he competed for a city title, but fortunately lost it there to Kennedy. A little bit of pain there still, right, Greg?
Oh, yeah, still haunts my dreams.
Still a hot spot. Went on to play at Cal Berkley as a pitcher for 4 years, and was fortunate enough to get drafted and played professionally in the Dodgers minor league system. He's also a very successful coach. He was the head pitching coach for Chaminade and Calabasas high schools, respectively. And currently, he's the head JV coach at El Camino and one of the owners of a local club team, California Prospects. He also has a pitching academy for youth players. Greg, welcome. How you doing today, my friend?
Doing great. It's awesome to be here, especially the inaugural first session of your guys' podcast. Can't tell you how flattered I am to be here.
We wanted to bring you here today just to talk about the youth baseball scenes. And you're plopped right down in the middle of it, from high school down to, what do you have, 9-year-old prospect team? Is that where it starts?
Yeah, 9 years old. Actually, my daughter just started softball at 5, so literally kind of getting mixed around all over. But yeah, pretty much. Usually the ages of pretty much 10 to 14 is usually our kind of club ball scene. But Eric said, I've been doing high school baseball along with it, and kind of that's the new kind of norm that a lot of times high schools are having their programs that are the upper levels and also working with the youth ages as well.
When I talked to your partner, and we've talked to Eric and talked to you, that you're really you really want to revive the baseball in the West San Fernando Valley. You want to really pick up the community and use baseball as something that to that effect.
Sure. Club ball, it definitely has its place, and there's, goods and pros and cons of both things, but especially the community, like you said. I remember, stories that we were even talking before we were getting started here about, when you are playing in leagues like that you have a sense of community, that there's, competition, there's rivalries, but it's within your community. You see those people, their friends, their families, people that you want to spend time with. And it's not just somewhere that you go to a quick tournament and leave right when it's done. It's something where the kids and families hang out for a few hours, sometimes I remember growing up.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, I was there literally, if I wasn't playing or not, I was watching a buddy. We're playing buns up or doing something. It was somewhere that was a safe place that you can go, be a kid, a lot of baseball, home run derby, things like that. So it was baseball related, but it was a place that the community could come and hang out, and, even the dads would go and hang out, even if their kids weren't playing. That sort of sense of community to me is definitely getting lost, and I think that would be a travesty to see, that sort of a thing, because baseball is the type of sport that, yes, we all want to play. We would love to get to, college or to make it to the pros if you're lucky enough. 4% of kids in college make it. Most of them aren't. So at the end of the day, it's those experiences that you're left with that obviously are hopefully what makes you a ball player, not necessarily, just being the best of the best, which is, yeah, you want to do that too. But at the same time, that sense of community is really part of baseball, especially at this age group that really is getting lost these days.
Yeah, you meet kids when you're 5, 6 years old that just end up lifelong friends.
And even from the adult perspective, as a guy that was a football player and was, taught baseball really by Tim, a basketball game, a soccer game, a football game, you're there for the game, everybody disperses and goes home. With baseball, it's an experience, right? You're there all day. You might watch your kid play, and then your kid wants to watch their friends play, and then they're going to play buns up, then they're going to get a hot dog at the snack shack, a smoothie, an icy, and then maybe all the families go out for beer and pizza. Well, beer for the adults, right? Pizza for the kids.
Yeah, there's always that community restaurant that everybody seems to go to afterwards.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I remember when I was growing up, everybody would just pile into Dairy Queens in the small towns of Oregon. So.
Well, see, when I was growing up, it was over in West Hills, and you guys kind of know the area. There was, which is now the Wells Fargo. There was a place called Rosie's Barbecue, and it was just that's where you went all the time after. I remember Rosie's. So there's always that one place that everybody goes to. Now it's West Hills Pizza.
Yeah, it'll rotate, but the theme is the same, right? The location is different. It could be Dairy Queen, West Hills Pizza.
West Hills Pizza is still very popular for us.
Yeah, shout out to my boy Steve Cohen. He's got a great thing going on there.
Great awesome. Place, great place. Visit local places and support local businesses. That's great.
Wherever you be.
Yeah, so Greg, one of the things we've been looking at, right, in your time as a player, coach, club owner, private trainer, what have you seen change in youth baseball since you were a kid? Like in the last, like, say, 5 to 7 years, because it feels different now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's some things that are similar. There's some things that have definitely changed. I think that, like we were just talking about, the sense of community is changing where, I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, like we were talking about, you met your friends through baseball. I mean, a lot of the kids that I knew from school, obviously Dan Williams is one of our coaches. His brother and I are friends because we started playing baseball. You kind of gravitate towards those guys at school even. So sometimes with club ball, I mean, you have guys from different areas and you don't necessarily see them other than at practice. I mean, this was something where you were really invested in, and the competitiveness within the league was much, much stronger. You had all your players pretty much primarily doing rec baseball. Then if you were lucky enough, you made all-stars and you wore your all-star jacket to school and you were proud of it. And you were very proud of being the best of your local league. And there was something to be said about being on that all-star team or even win the championship as your rec league. And not to say that there isn't anymore. I mean, obviously it sounds like even from what you guys were saying, there's a lot of competitiveness still there, but then you also have a lot of the players that maybe think that they're looking for the next best thing, and then they don't decide to come back to the league. Where I remember growing up and being in Mustang, 10 years old, and then looking up over at the next levels and seeing Randy Wolf pitching, and then at the next level down you had Connor Jackson. Those guys had huge MLB careers, and Connor's a dear friend of mine, and he definitely would come back and say that, hey, look, West Hills baseball, I mean, the guys, I'm just naming a few, they were the best of the best playing at your local leagues. And then club ball back then, it was very much in its infancy, and you would only have maybe one guy from each all-star team. If you were, West Hills, you'd maybe have one or two guys from there, then another couple guys from Santa Clarita, another. So it was the best 10 kids from a geographical area. And when you played an all-star tournament, you kind of started picking out guys, and you formed a team. I mean, now there's more of a sense where club ball, I usually call it more developmental travel ball, where the other part of obviously having, or the downside of rec league, is there's a lot of dads that are great and all of them are fantastic for volunteering their time, and nothing against anybody that volunteers their time for kids. However, there's sometimes you are maybe looking for a little bit more development, and a coach doesn't know quite as much. And like I said, God love all the dads and moms that want to donate their time.
But there's a place, and there's
so now you have guys where when I was growing up, you didn't necessarily have a lot of guys like myself that played maybe high school, college, possibly and beyond, that are coming back and becoming coaches, where it was a lot of times dads that, maybe played, or some of them were, better than others, but it wasn't where you could obviously go and pick this program or this coach. I like the way that he's going to develop my son. So that's something that now is different, that you have the ability to go and make sure that your son is getting a certain kind of development, or your daughter, you can get a certain kind of development, where that's kind of, I think, the pro nowadays. However, it's just become so overdone that, in my opinion, that you're losing the focus on what baseball at this age should be about.
Which is the community.
The community and all the other things that baseball teaches you, besides obviously becoming the best at your craft. Obviously, club ball and things like that are usually very good to develop you as your baseball player and your skills. But in my opinion, like Augie Garita, the famous coach from Texas, he would always say that baseball is a microcosm for life. Meaning that obviously you're learning things about adversity, leadership. If you're having a tough year, hey, become a leader and work towards something. You made a commitment. I mean, if you're whatever it might be, you had a tough time at the plate, there's adversity you have to deal with. You're not playing enough. Hey, I mean, I remember growing up, dads would, hey, if you're not playing enough, my dad said, hey, I was playing right field. We're going to go to the park and every single day, and we're going to hit you 1,000 ground balls and fly balls, and we're going to get you better so you earn your spot. Now it's kind of, oh, well, if you're not playing on this team, there's another team that we think you can go play for.
Bouncing about.
That's kind of the more of the message.
I think the club scene is much more viewed as pay to play versus how it was 10 years ago. An elite set of 12 kids, maybe.
It's really exploded too, club ball, recently, because a few rec ball leagues that I'm very familiar with have been really gutted by people leaving for, where you would have 8 teams, say, for a spring season, and it's dwindled down to, like, I think last year one of those leagues had 4.
Yeah, a couple leagues.
4 12-year-old teams.
So 48 kids total, right?
Yeah.
And that's where, I mean, I was fortunate enough to start playing club ball. I think I was probably about 11. But when we did it, it was, you played your rec league. There was 0 club ball during spring league.
So there was no overlap.
There was 0. And then the tournaments that you played in, it was a tournament like what was back then AAU, where you would go to a tournament periodically and then you play against the best teams in Southern California. If you won that, then you go and you play in the next one, almost like an all-star tournament. Now, I mean, I always kind of joke that there's the, back to school World Series, then there's the Halloween World Series, and then this world. I mean, every single weekend there's a tournament where, I mean, it's now become so much about, I mean, having all these tournaments and these different travel things where it should be something
these
where
worthless rings that
it should be you play your rec league, you play all stars, and then there's that certain period of time maybe in the fall where certain select kids should get to go out and play, or even kids that are looking to develop and get a little bit extra training should possibly be able to do that. And there's a way to possibly do it like how I feel like we do, is that there should be a conjunction where, hey, you want to still get development during the spring, but hey, rec ball should kind of take a precedence over club ball at that particular time.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of jumps in. We can, kind of lean on like what parents' expectations are, between rec ball and coaching rec ball. You're going to get 2 or 3 parents that are dissatisfied with the dad that's out there doing the best he can.
Right.
So your history, the last 10 years in mind, have parents' expectations like really changed?
I think that there's always been passionate parents. There's passionate parents today. There's, passionate parents when I was, growing up. I think the difference really is that there was more accountability from the parents. I had a couple buddies that, I mean, gosh, if they had a tough day at the plate, I mean, they had their hitting thing in the backyard, and as soon as they're done, hey, we're not going out to, Rosie's barbecue like we were talking about. We're going home. You're hitting 200 balls off the tee. You're getting better today. I mean, nowadays it's kind of, player, everyone's on the game changer, and his ball got through. And yeah, I mean, so there's a different sense of that. I think also the matter of winning and losing. I mean, when I was growing up, hey, if your team's not very good, you got picked on that one year in rec ball and you're having a tough year, that's kind of part of it. I won one championship, I think, in Little League, and it was great. I also had a couple years that we didn't do so well, and that kind of forced me to have to kind of be a leader and have to, obviously show that, or become more composed in your emotions, that, hey, I'm not going to get down on my teammates. I'm not going to, slap my glove because we lost a game. Losing is part of any sport. And now it's like, if the team's losing, we're going to go to somewhere else.
The expectation thing is such a sticking point, right? What the parents expect, what the kids expect. You said you won one, right? And you were fortunate enough to do that. And then you had some other challenging years. And I had the opposite experience, right? With my son, Dante, he won 5. So that when he came to club ball, not winning everything was tough for him.
And that's exactly the dynamic that I'm kind of talking about. It's I mean, especially, if you figure, when you get to high school, you're playing 5 days a week, sometimes 6.
Yeah.
There's only one team at the end of the year that's going to win.
That's right.
So, when you win the city title in high school, obviously the World Series in college, that's even harder. The amount of games and different things they have to go through with the super regionals and everything else. But even just high school, when you win that ring, you did something very, very special.
Right.
So now, these kids, I kind of joke, about it, that they're getting, rings when they win the Labor Day World Series, and they look like Super Bowl rings.
4 teams entered the tournament.
Yeah, it's just, and another thing too that I always kind of talked about with my buddy who's an umpire, and we would kind of argue about it during the Little League World Series a couple of years ago. There was a kid, he was up to bat. Yeah, marginal call. We'll say possibly a bad call to my friend's point. And I said to him, yeah, look, he's trying to, as an umpire, say, yeah, that call's 4, 5, 6 inches off the plate, this and that. It's a terrible call. And then a lot of people were commenting on social media, which also have a gripe with. But the kid, kind of drops his bat, hangs his head, turns his head, kind of rolls his eyes at the umpire. Whether the call was good or bad, how about the fact that a 12-year-old kid is disrespecting an adult? That should be something that should be, obviously addressed, that, hey, look, whether it's a ball or a strike, you do not challenge an adult. That's the coach's job, et cetera, et cetera. Get your little tushy back here in the dugout, sit down.
Yeah, there's
those sort of things that, are different.
Yeah, there's a video on Instagram or somewhere on social media of this kid who was a catcher, and he said something to the umpire on a call, and the umpire kicked him out of the game. He starts tearing off his gear, double flips the umpire.
Yeah, wow. Exactly.
Exactly. And walks off the field. And his gear is laying all over.
Oh, yeah. There's a thing on social media. There's this one, I forgot the name of the thing, but they post different plays and whether or not he's safe or out. Who cares?
Oh, God. I can't stand that stuff.
Yeah, it drives me bonkers. And then that's the other thing, too, with parents today. I think the social media, for multiple reasons in our society, kind of creates some havoc. But everybody's real quick to want to post the glory and, hey, look at what we did, instead of, just being in the moment and just, let your kid play. And I've never heard anybody that's made it to a higher level say, I was the best 12-year-old of all time. And,
Right.
so it's like, guys.
Middle school superstar.
Well, I always,
there you go, right?
I always marvel at these parents on social media. My kid won this, my kid won that. And you don't see it every weekend, right? So obviously there's some times where
and there's definitely times and places. I'm not completely
but I
post,
think I respect the parents more that show, if you're going to dialogue it, do the whole thing, the whole
not just
struggles
the good stuff.
too, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's part of life, right?
100%.
Baseball field, you learn there's somebody in charge, there's a position for you, just like there will be at a job, at a family, at a relationship.
And you say that we would have been any different. It's just a different time and age. We didn't have social media or things like that.
Thank God.
Yeah, and there were knucklehead parents when I was
really
growing up too. So I mean, it's I think just more in the generality of everything that's kind of how it's changed. In my opinion.
now that we're in this era of where kids, at least you figure most teams have 3 to 4 kids also playing club ball on their rec league team, right? What do you think the benefits or drawbacks are for kids playing both? Let's say at the same time.
You kind of touched on that earlier. You're getting developed in rec ball or in club ball a little more than in rec ball.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I don't know the exact answer. I would like to think that it's on the right track to say that, hey, there's a way for both places to coexist. And for myself, I try to take the opinion for the exact reason we're talking about community that, hey, if you can't make one of our practices, while it's unfortunate and we're going to be maybe less guys, if you have to obviously go and be part of the community for your rec team because you made that commitment, hey, we're understanding. And if we only have 9 guys as the club ball team, but your rec team has 12 guys, hey, maybe your coach would be understanding that you need to come and play for us because you guys got enough. And maybe your team might not play as well in a regular season game, and that coach might be upset that, hey, maybe they drop a game. But, hey, we're trying to work together because there should be a place where the rec league and the community understands that people want to play club now. And on the other hand, the club ball coaches can't really start to overdo it to the point that, hey, now you're completely, like Tim was saying, you're completely taking everything away from the community rec leagues as well. There's got to be some sort of balance between both.
Right. I would say that my follow-up question to that is, are you concerned as a pitching coach on the torque on these kids' arms when they're playing both?
100%, and that's I always make the joke that we're very blessed in Southern California. We get 365 days a year of baseball. That's also the curse that we get 365 days a year of baseball. So, I mean, and I try to tell the parents a lot of times, hey, look, you're only going to get so much time with your kids. And I already see my kids growing up very fast. And I remember, as a youngster, missing all types of things, family vacations, the rest of the family's going on bar mitzvahs, this, that, whatever. And you're missing things where to go play in a tournament, which is that at the end of the day, when you're older, are those are the things that you're going to really remember? Sure, you want to do enough of that, but at the same time, if you're playing tournaments literally every single weekend, summer, winter, fall, how many things are you giving up to actually enjoy your life? Maybe try a different sport. I don't think that obviously during a season when you make that, for us, it's September through December essentially is kind of the bigger time. Yeah. But hey, the rest of the year, I mean, there's definitely got to be some time to let the kids be kids, to kind of ease off the gas pedal a little bit and
rest the body.
Yeah, I mean, the big leaguers say they take at least 4 to 6 weeks off at least before starting to get going, and then that's back to kind of square one on a throwing program and everything else. It's not take 3 weeks off and back into a tournament where you're playing 6 games in a weekend.
Having analyzed all that, Greg, what do you think, being that you run a club team and you're a high school coach, what do you think the biggest shock factors for first-year high school freshmen are coming in, straight from rec ball and club ball? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's kind of one of hopefully the things that is an advantage of club ball is that it's supposed to get you ready for high school. But even that being said, I mean, you're still a lot of times some of these even the better players, but the average player can still sometimes be a big fish in a relatively smaller pond, so to speak. Now, as soon as you get to high school, you're an average-sized fish in an ocean of really good ball players,
right?
So, I mean, that's kind of obviously a rude awakening, and a lot of times it can be a struggle for the kids to go from a point where they were very dominant, possibly at club ball level or rec ball level, especially. Then they come in. There's a lot of guys now that are pretty good, especially when you're, a freshman, on, the frosh soft team or JV, and then you got the varsity guys above you, and you're kind of seeing, hey, look, this is what I got to compete against now. Especially, when you're at that level, you might be a freshman on varsity that's playing, you're 14, 15, playing against sometimes kids that are 18. So, and especially when you get to the next level, it's the same thing. You might be an incoming freshman in college, and you might be playing against a 22-year-old. So having that ability to understand that there is that adversity, there's always a bigger fish, and then being able to obviously understand that you have to have the work ethic and the tenacity to get better and to improve versus just, okay, I can coast by. It's kind of the whole Kobe Bryant thing where, hey, you got to be working, harder, better than the next guy, in front of you, where sometimes the kids, I think they lose some of their interest in baseball because it's not as easy as it used to be.
I think baseball in particular, right? If you're in football and you're a 6'6", 300-pound defensive end that can run a 4.7, you have physical advantages.
You got those skills.
And not that there's not physical, same thing in basketball, right? If you're 6'10" and you can jump out of the building. Not that there's not physical advantages in baseball, but it's much more about the details and the work that you have to put in, even if you have those
the
physical advantages.
And the game speeds up a lot. There's a lot more, nuances. There's, the pace of play, the different types of strategies and plays that you're going to implement is a lot more. The other thing is too, is that we were kind of talking about, as I came in, the tone of the coaches and the seriousness and the level of commitment that they're going to expect from you, where a lot of the kids, they kind of maybe got away with some, certain attitude things that coaches would maybe address in club ball, but it is also kind of that pay to play thing where you don't want to be too hard on kids at that level. It is still club, it is still youth baseball, but at the same time, once you get to high school, they expect you to be young men and student athletes. So at that point, it's definitely different that you're going to be, under a lot different tone. The other thing is too, is that you're a lot of times now practicing 5 days a week, 6 days, possibly with a game on Saturday. It's not the sort of thing that you can just, hey, 2 practices a week and then we're going to play in a tournament here and there. It's a full year-long grind, and it's summer ball, winter ball, and like I said, during the fall, you're in the weight room, you're doing running and conditioning, where a lot of these kids, they love baseball. I picked baseball because I didn't like soccer because I ran too much. Then you get to high school and realize, hey, especially if you're a pitcher, you're running a lot. So it is definitely a big shock in terms of that, as well as just the level of commitment that it takes.
Yeah, and I think also, like you're saying, the competition is going to be so much better. Like what, a base hit or a ground ball to shortstop in rec ball might be an infield single, and you're out by 6 feet in high school.
Oh yeah, I'll never forget. My first time ever pitching in high school, after freshman year, I was a freshman on varsity, and then I didn't pitch really that much that year. But we then played, at that point, it was still American Legion. Now it's Vibble. But in any case, I remember we were playing against Agura, and I forgot the guy's name, but he was a senior catcher. Just built like a brick house. And he hit a ball that whizzed by my head, and it just whistled as it went by, and it was like, whoa, okay, this is a little different. I remember, the younger levels, it was kind of, you just cruise through things, and he's the flamethrower and this and that. It's like, didn't really impress that guy too much as the ball's whizzing by my ear. So.
Yeah, that's another thing, going back to like parents' expectations too, is like Eric and I did a couple of little tournament teams, and not knowing what's out there when you're in your bubble of like a rec league,
exactly.
And then you show up, I don't know, I think we went to Duarte or somewhere like that.
Yeah, we got the crap.
And there was a team coming from Arizona that was just sort of prepping for a tournament in San Diego, one of the World Series tournaments.
They were going to do 3 prep tournaments before.
And, they had, I think our kids were like 9 or 10, 9 that year. 9, these kids look 15. Easily 15.
Oh, yeah. You're just wondering when their shift at Walmart starts.
Right. It's like they drop their keys on the way to
what time is prom?
Car.
Yeah.
But, so, the first game was over before we even sat down. It was like before we even... it was a mercy. And
second inning mercy, yeah.
And so then you have parents that are complaining. They don't understand the bubble that you live in and the competition that is out there. And to your point with high school, it's like there's serious jumps in ability and talent and size and strength and all that from 12-year-old to say 14.
100%. I mean, you always, in any sport for that matter, but especially baseball, you learn more from your struggles than you do from your success. When you're succeeding, you're just expecting to kind of just maintain, and I'm already doing good enough. It's when you get kind of knocked down a peg or two that, hey, like I just said about, hey, I got to high school, guys are hitting the ball off me. I better start working harder to get better. That's where you start to actually learn how to progress and to develop, where if you're always constantly winning, like you said, hey, parents, as soon as there was a sign of some adversity, good. Let the kids kind of get beat up a little bit to then learn that, hey, look, there's a bigger fish in the fish pond, and to actually, hey, if you want this bad enough, don't get upset that you lost a couple. Let's get to work and get better. And that sort of idea, mentality, I think, is kind of changed in the last. You asked about parent differences. That's definitely one of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just who just beat you down, you say, okay, that's the new bar.
Correct.
You know, that's that. You know, if I'm
that's what I'm expecting to play now. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just have to, like you're saying, just have to get better and
forward
better
as opposed to looking at your past successes and how do I get to that level, right? Versus
I mean,
to
even take that to the next level. I mean, there's 4% of guys from high school that make it to college. And I remember walking. I was one of the better players as a senior in our little small neck of the woods. And then I remember walking into Cal Berkley the first day, and wow. That guy's the best from here. That guy's the best from there. He's all state from Colorado.
Everybody's the best, right?
And they're all throwing 90 miles an hour. Like, wow, like I'm no longer the guy anymore. And then you got to, once again, go back to that same thing that you went through as a freshman incoming. Then if you're lucky enough to get from that level, you're in A-ball, you get drafted. Well, there's guys that are better than you in AAA. So the more that you learn how to prepare for that, and then there's the next level, and there's always that next jump to get better, then you're starting to prepare to how to do that. And that's not only just for baseball. I mean, I feel like that's something that you learn for life skills for anything you want to do in life. So Definitely. That type of thing that's being kind of taken out of that struggle, what are the kids, not only for baseball, like we said, Acheatel says it's a microcosm for life. What is that basically setting up the kids to do future in life, that if it's not just easy for them to do it, what's going to happen then? Are they going to be able to deal with adversity and continue on? Or
well, it's funny about the adversity thing and going through that. I was a couple years ago, I had a club team and I was at a tournament and we got to the championship, which is really not that big of a deal if you understand club ball, right? You're getting to, there's a couple different brackets. And so anyway, I remember one of my kids saying, well, it doesn't matter if we lose, we're still going to get a ring. Because first and second place got a ring,
exactly,
and it's like,
right there. That
how are you taught to strive to get better if that's okay because we get everybody's a winner, everybody gets a ring, a trophy. That drives me crazy. I don't know. What about you guys?
No, yeah. I've never been a fan of, everybody gets a trophy and all that at any level, because I do believe it sends the wrong message.
Oh, by the way, we lost that game badly, and everybody was excited for a ring, which really drove me crazy.
I know, like your kid too.
Yeah,
he doesn't show it, but he hates losing.
Oh yeah,
right. He cannot stand it.
Can't stand it.
And it's not about if it's third place. What he doesn't like third place. No, third place is not good enough. And he'll stew over it. He'll be really quiet, and I know just not to talk to him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in high school, if you play on the high school team, you get a certificate from your school and from the CIF that says, okay, you participated, you're a letterman, whatever the exact term is, fine. But like you said, the trophy.
That just means you showed up.
That there's something, if you want to give out something, a certificate that you completed this, whatever. I mean, I agree with, possibly that, but yeah, everybody gets a trophy. That's, yeah.
It just breeds. It takes away the fire out of the belly,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're rewarding somebody for not, some people for not, for just showing up, and I think, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, especially I mentioned earlier. I mean, the way that they're giving out rings that it literally look like Super Bowl rings.
Yeah.
When you actually get to high school and you get a ring for winning the city title, that's pretty much the same thing that you got when you were 12. How special is that?
How is that special?
Yeah, you got a drawer full of ones you won,
exactly.
12, 13, 14. And then you get that one.
It's like when you go on vacation, it's only special because you're only there a little bit of the time, right? If you have a whole bunch of, you live in Hawaii's not that great anymore, right?
Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Hawaii's pretty good. That's a bad example. Hawaii's pretty good.
Yeah, they're okay.
Maybe Palm Springs is a better example, but,
Ooh.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's hot there.
They got the power out there. That's one of the big minor league teams or independent ball teams.
Yeah,
now.
that's right.
So they got
that's
some
right.
good baseball there, too. It's everywhere. Yeah. Baseball's, it's everywhere now.
Oh, yeah.
So I know we've been talking a lot about referring to, Southern California baseball, and, it's metropolis, metro area. There's baseball everywhere, like Greg said. And I just want to, for people out there listening that might not have, they might live in a more rural area or, a distance from facilities. And just talking about kids that have access and constant training, constant club ball, rec ball. There's, personal coaches all over the place down here. What would you tell kids or parents that are living, that might not have that much access to, say, a personal trainer or, a full club team?
Well, honestly, that was another thing you asked, kind of some of the differences, from my generation now. The internet is obviously a huge major tool. You can obviously, I don't personally do it, but there are guys that you can videotape and then send them in your workouts, your videotapes from your hitting, and they'll give you adjustments. There's a lot of, you have to kind of go through with a fine tooth comb because there's some stuff out there that, in my opinion, is everyone's trying to do a great job. Nothing against that, but there's certain things you got to obviously kind of pick and choose, but there's a wealth of knowledge on the internet. I always tell the kids, even when they come to me for lessons, you can go onto the internet and find a million different drills. In my opinion is, did you actually take the time to understand it? And are you actually going to implement it and do it right? Just because, even if you go to a coach that's right there with you, if you don't reinforce that at home, what they're teaching you, it's almost the equivalent of going to school and then not doing your homework. You can go to class every day and still get a C because you didn't turn in your homework. So there's a lot of valuable stuff on the internet. We're actually using a really good system now called the Futures app that was created by a player out of UCLA that was in with the Rangers. And it gives you access to trainers from UCLA. It gives you access to different videos from a lot of the pros. So there's a wealth of knowledge that's out there that can be, obviously utilized, on the internet and things like that. The tough part, obviously, of that is it's really hard to obviously know whether you are actually doing it correctly without that.
Right?
Because you might be thinking you're doing it without seeing it, which in that case, what I always suggest even to the players that I do see, if you're doing something at home, you have a video camera in your pocket. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, the first coach I ever had that did that, it was with the old, glass TVs, and you'd use some markers on it, and you have to get the VHS and tape, and then go into the room.
You're dating yourself, Coach.
You can literally just put the phone out, and all the kids have one. Just put it on a chair or something. Film 5 throws, film 5 swings, take a look. Because you feel sometimes like you're doing it, but you have the ability where, like I said, for us back then, it was very tough. And it was only maybe one coach doing it, and you'd have to go videotape with the old, shoulder camcorders. Now, with the ability to, obviously, the internet and the feasibility to be able to videotape yourself and then take a look, where most of the kids, they just kind of do it, but they're reluctant to want to utilize the technology at their disposal. So that's what I would probably say for kids that are more in an area like that.
And there's that old saying too: is if you're good enough, they will find you.
100%.
Yeah,
I think that's so true in baseball versus other sports, right? The cream will rise.
Yeah, even for people, I do lessons. I think that there's a place for lessons, but a lot of times, even if you're going to a lesson, you could have coaches that are out there, and we're all trying to do the best we can, but the kids aren't reinforcing at home, where it's the same lesson week after week after week, because the kids aren't actually practicing. So if you're going to be a parent that's going to obviously spend the resources and the time to do these things, whether it's off the internet or going to a privatized coach, to get to the next level, the kids have to put in the extra time and work on their own. And if they're not ready to do that, don't even waste your time with that stuff.
Good point.
Good point. Yeah.
I guess lastly, on that note, we talked about high school, club ball, rec ball. I know there's just tons of scouting events now.
It's almost similar like the youth levels. It's very saturated, and it's almost gotten to the point that there's good ones and there's things that are out there that are, almost trying to make a buck. And what I tell people nowadays is that all these tournaments are good because if you are, say, a player that's maybe, let's say, on JV, but you're a very good player and you have the aspirations of playing college. If you videotape, your summer baseball games playing against, another local team, and it's the JV baseball field, and you videotape that, it just doesn't necessarily look right. But if you can say that, hey, I did go to the Arizona tournament, even though the coaches, sometimes parents say, well, we didn't see the coaches out there. Well, if you videotape everything without being a distraction, I know some of the parents kind of all huddle up against the fence, but finding a way to videotape without being a distraction, and then being able to start databasing all those at-bats that are good. There's tons of platforms that are out there now that allow you to search schools, find different criterias, almost like an Expedia kind of search engine where you can pick different criteria. Do I want a small school, D1, D2, D3, East Coast, West Coast? Make your list of schools, sit down with, your son or daughter and then start to figure out, hey, what are the schools that, kind of from top to bottom, best, middle, worst, East Coast, West Coast, wherever you geographically want to go, and have a diversified list of schools. So that way, when the time comes, you can then start to obviously reach out to the schools and you videotape and you can send them, because a lot of times some of these schools, especially some of the smaller schools, I mean, UCLA has, their scouts and all the top 25,
right.
But hey, not everyone's going to make the top 25. What about the schools that are maybe a good D2 that is a great place that you'd want to go, has your major? Then you might not have the resources to send out their scouts. So by having, the videotape and going to these tournaments, that'll give them obviously enough of an initiative to say, hey, we want to reach back to this young man, and then start to follow them and then start that process of being able to interact with that, particular player and start a recruiting process. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the pros and cons of it, where yes, it is almost kind of gotten to a point where it's gotten too big and out of control. But at the same time, if you're only filming yourself, kind of once again in that small fish pond, hey, great, you got 4 hits off of the other local team that had their JV team, but half their team is out at, the Arizona Fall Classic. And how much does that really prove that you hit 400 in summer league baseball in your own little backyard? If you went to the Arizona Fall Classic or the Perfect Game, national championship, whatever that is, and you went 4 for 4, that sure holds a whole lot more value. So that's the one side of it, that if you're going to start doing the recruiting process, you do at least need to go to some of these tournaments that
it's controls, right? Because the field is a certain size.
Correct.
The umpires are vetted a certain way.
They look professional.
Right?
The teams that you're playing against, that if they're also going to that tournament, there's better competition. So it holds a lot more value than just, okay, you hit 400, versus, once again, the local rec league.
Right.
It's kind of, that's the purpose of some of these tournaments, even if the scouts aren't necessarily coming out, is it gives you the opportunity to at least, hopefully videotape and then be able to create a little highlight reel and send out to the potential schools that you want to go to.
And parents, listen up. Prepare beforehand. Some of these facilities have in-game cams that you can go back and watch later.
Sure.
You may not necessarily need to whip out the iPhone. You might be able to go back and grab clips.
Well, what I do is, I have the GoPro and it has an app that connects right to your phone.
Perfect.
And then so you can just sit there and hit record, and you don't even have to get up and make yourself look like you're going up there and being that, kind of guy that's hovering over the fence.
Your elbow up.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's definitely ways to do it where you're not, once again, being a distraction.
Don't step out.
Right.
No, it's
gotta love those parents.
It's funny. There was that one thing on one of the posts where there's a line of parents all in line right by the batter's box, jump up next after next to take their videos.
They're in line like the kids are in line to bat.
Yeah, exactly. There's a batting order with their kids right by the fence.
That makes a kid feel great when all these cameras are on them. That's the other thing, is you might give the kid stage fright. So be inconspicuous if you're filming your kid.
Yeah, that's why the GoPro, they never know if it's on. It just, there's ways to clip it up to the fence. It makes it easier.
Yeah, and it's very
small,
inconspicuous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that's what I would definitely, once again, like fieldlevel.com is, I have a good friend from Cal that actually started up. It's a great service that allows you to be able to, go on there, check out the different schools, look at it, and then it'll highlight kind of a list. Then you have a profile that you can put all your videos on. You can also then reach out to schools. So whether it's field level, NCSA is another one that's big. I would definitely recommend more field level. But that's the thing, is get on those platforms earlier, and that way you can start to obviously figure out your college list, what schools you'd want to go to, start doing your videotaping, and that would be the best process there.
So get started like around T-ball, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Get started early, parents.
That's right.
Like, no,
right.
that's not.
Yeah, no, I'd say,
Please don't do
and that's
that.
the other thing too, is that I failed to mention is that there is a time and a place for it. Not everybody should do it right away. If you're looking to go Division I, most of those schools now are giving out possible verbal scholarships by sophomore year. So if your aspirations are to go to those schools, you probably do need to start earlier. Now, if you're somebody that's physically not ready yet, you're still going through adolescence, you might want to wait a little bit longer. Now, like I said, if your aspirations are to make a major D1, you probably need to start sooner than later. Even the D2s, if you're waiting until senior year, that's the biggest thing, is if, hey, junior year's out, now I'm going to start putting my name out there and start reaching out to these schools. They've already been in contact with kids and started following them. And they don't necessarily they're not going to judge you necessarily about what you're doing right now as a sophomore. They want to see, okay, if you're a sophomore at 160 pounds, now you're a junior at 170 pounds, and you went from 70 miles an hour to 75, they now have a track record to show projectability. So that's the other thing is that it's not necessarily about showing what you want to do right away. It's, hey, coach, this is what I was, follow me from freshman or, going into sophomore year, then hey, this is what I did from sophomore year to junior year, and this is how I'm progressing. I've gotten stronger. Here's my weightlifting times, things like, or weightlifting scores. That would then show projectability to the coaches, can then obviously evaluate how you're going to then be at a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old.
Follow-up question to that, Greg, was, I always feel like when kids are at that level where they're about to go to college, right? And whether it's D1, D2, junior college, whatever, I always feel like they should maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, go where you're going to get playing time, right? Because not everybody's going to be a pro. Go where you can play.
I loved my experience at Cal Berkley. It was great. I'll be the first to say my first couple of years I didn't play very much. I was given the opportunity to also go to Santa Barbara, which, like I said, I love Cal. I am Cal Berkley through and through, but at the same time, I do wonder sometimes, if I had gotten the opportunity to go to Santa Barbara and played a lot more earlier, had that have developed me better. So that's kind of one of those things, especially for, as we were talking about earlier, kids that are competitive in that adversity of how to deal with those things. It was actually good for me to have to go through that. It made me work harder. That kind of actually lit kind of a fire underneath my rear end to start actually getting better. That's the only reason I got a chance to play at the next level. But at the same time, yeah, if you're the type of person it's gonna be tough for you to sit on the bench, and I mean a lot of times those rosters have 35, 40 guys on them, so it's not just a 20-man guy. There's 20 guys that aren't playing.
You kind of buried in the depth chart,
correct?
Especially as an underclassman, right? If you weren't
100%
blowing it out of the water.
Yeah, sometimes you're even just hoping to make the travel roster. You're just excited to travel with the team, not even necessarily even play. You're just like, hey, I just made the travel roster. So it's a very, very tough thing.
And celebrate your successes, right? If you walked on and you made the travel roster, that's a great success.
100%. That's the other thing too is, obviously if you're the type of person, like for me, I would say that obviously Berkeley's a great school, has education, all those other things, but hey, it's Pac-12, which unfortunately
for another year.
I had to throw that one out there. But yeah, in the same case, it's, if your ego's so big that, hey, look, I have to go to the bigger school, it's more prestigious, go somewhere you're going to have fun and play. 100%.
And the education part of it is very important too.
It's like Cal's education.
When you're choosing a school,
be a pro. Everybody.
When you're choosing a school, and you have access, you're going to go to Cal. It's a very, very good school. So
100%. Obviously, if you have the opportunity, and the same thing, if you have the opportunity to get in on grades to UCLA, to a Cal, or any of those bigger, good academic schools, I always question parents that they'll send their kids to a Division II that nobody's heard of in the middle of nowhere because their kids want to continue their next 4 years of baseball or continue their career. Get your education where it's going to take, and that's going to take you places far, far beyond what baseball can take.
We just had a kid from Calabasas, the president of West Hills Baseball, Brandon Wicko, his son committed to Harvard, right?
I didn't know that. Congratulations!
I'm pretty sure he committed to Harvard. I saw it on Facebook, but
very nice family.
Some of the comments
Brandon.
people said were like, "Great, awesome, congratulations." Some people said, "Oh, that's not a very good baseball school." Well, you know what? There's more to life than baseball, and they are good.
Actually, one of the young men I coached at Chaminade, he wound up going to Brown, and then he actually transferred, and then I didn't realize he transferred. And he transferred to Duke, another great, obviously, academic school. Right. Turn on the super regionals and the regionals this year. Hey, he's on TV, so. Yeah,
get a great education, 100%. Great experience, life experience too.
Yeah,
and it's also like you don't know when injury strikes. Yeah, just anything can happen, and your playing days.
Well, let's say best case scenario. I always tell all the young players that have played for us, best case scenario, you go pro and you're a stud and you're done at 38. You got a lot of life left, right? So there's other things that's going to be post baseball. The game will retire you at some point.
100%.
So. Education is super important.
Yeah, and if you're throwing 95 in Harvard or you're throwing 95 at UCLA or
it's still 95.
At Vanderbilt, they're going to find you. Yeah, they're going to find you.
I always love that. If you're good enough, they're going to find you.
100%.
Yeah, sure.
With that said, thank you, Greg.
Yes, awesome. It's so awesome talking baseball with you guys. I really appreciate you guys having me out.
This is what we live for.
This is why we want to do this. Just John, about the ball game and about the kids, about potential, where you could go,
expectations,
just all that stuff,
all that stuff.
It's all the kind of stuff you hear in the bleachers. And
no, this is great. I feel like you guys are gonna have a lot of really interesting guests. I look forward to watching the show, and just kind of getting this type of information from multiple people, that are in the arena, getting it out there for everybody to see.
Well, speaking of people that are in the arena, tell us a little bit if kids want to go and take lessons from you. I know both of our sons take lessons from you, but Tell us where they can find you.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely you can go on the internet. You can go to my website, ACH Pitching Academy. So the first three initials of my last name, ashpitchingacademy.com. Also, our club ball teams. If anybody's interested in picking up a club ball, we are always interested in finding new players, and we always look to develop players. So if you would ever be interested in that, you can go to our website, California Prospects with an S at the end.org. And then you can definitely reach out to me. My information is on my website. And if you even have any questions, even if it's not to do a lesson or for anything, if you just have baseball related questions, anything about stuff we were talking about today, I love baseball, so please feel free. I love to help the community and players and families. So even if it's not necessarily about a lesson, you can please always call me. Love talking baseball.
And we're going to post that information on our website as well.
Correct.
Right. For our audience members to get a hold of you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me out today.
Appreciate you coming. Thanks for listening to the inaugural Third to First podcast. There's going to be more to come.
I did have a listener. Tell me the other day. Well, hey, what does that mean, third to first? And so I was telling Greg this the other day or last night. So we've all had those kids that it's their first time playing baseball and they don't know what to do. And every once in a while, if they're fortunate enough to hit the ball, they run opposite way and they go third to first.
Or they run straight through the pitcher's mound.
That's what I kind of figure that's what you're going with the play on words that, hey, we're going to kind of retract everything that's misconceived and it kind of.
And you know what? Exactly it's a fun moment. It's not. It's a laughing.
It's wonky.
It's wonky. The kid, you laugh, you give the kid high five, and usually the umpire just sends them the right way.
Yeah. And when they're young enough to be still doing that, it's fun.
Never let the fun out of the game.
Yeah.
And that's honestly the biggest thing out of all the different things we talked about today is if it's not fun,
why do it?
Yeah, 100%.
That's why they still call it a game, right?
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. So on that note,
on that note, everyone have a great week forward here, and we'll have a special guest for you next week. Stay tuned for that.
Appreciate you listening. Until next time, Third to First.
Visit us at thirdtofirst.com and on our Instagram, thirdtofirst_podcast.